Okay, hello. Thank you for watching this. This is for the 2020 grant proposal. I decided to go ahead and do some video of this. I felt like it might be a little bit easier for you to understand some of what I'm getting at with a whiteboard. Maybe more interesting. Hopefully it'll be fun. I want to start out talking about the graphic design program. That's primarily what this proposal attempts to change. The model this first go around is going to apply to it. The goal is not for it only to apply to that, the goal is for it to start there. So the beginning of this is going to just talk about context, and then I'm going to move into talking about the model that I'm proposing, and then lastly we'll talk about the impact of the model. So first, the graphic design program. The graphic design program is in really good shape. We have all the students we need. We actually capped the freshman cohort back in this fall. We have a really large senior cohort. We have about 80 to 90 students total within the program. Our students are doing incredible things. Over the last 5 years, we've made concerted efforts constantly to tweak and improve. We do end-of-year reviews every year for our students. We have a good sense of where they are. Our alumni, particularly our recent alumni, are doing amazing things. We recently had a graduate get a job for Pentagram, which is one of the top design agencies in the country. They only hire in the New York office, they have about 25 designers, and he got a job in that office. It's really a remarkable thing for a kid that was only a year out of school. That's a pretty young designer to get hired on there, and so we're super excited about that. But there's several stories like that of recent alumni doing remarkable things. So we're excited about where the design program is. This proposal is not making strong efforts to really improve the program or grow the program. This proposal is a way for us to find efficiencies in the program that will allow us to do some more things, but it's primarily about finding some efficiencies that I feel like are there, and this particular grant opportunity for the department is unique in giving us the ability to make some efforts in that way. So just wanted to get that out there. So second of all, the team that's involved in this, it's myself, Neil Santana, and Ryan Fear. They're the ones that teach all the graphic design classes. This is really all of our proposal. We've talked about this a lot. We all are in agreement with some of the requirements that would come with this. And we're excited about what it could do for the program and what it could do for us. And so I always want you to hear that it's the three of us as a team that are working on this. We work really closely together already. So I just want you to know that what you're hearing is supported by all of us. Okay, then, hold on, I'm looking at my notes. So the next thing I need to do is talk about how the program is structured, just again to give you some context. So the graphic design program, the main core curriculum looks like this. It starts off in the sophomore year for students. So sophomore year, fall semester, all graphic design majors that are sophomores in the sophomore cohort, they run in cohorts. They take type 1 in the fall, and then they take type 2 in the spring. Their junior year, they take identity and brand in the fall and information graphics in the spring. Senior year, they take persuasive graphics in the fall, and then portfolio and interactive design their last semester, their senior year. And again, the whole cohort moves through those classes. Let me talk about let me talk about studio descriptions, what it means for these to be studio classes. Most of the classes we teach in the art department are studio classes. That's how they're structured. What that means is they meet 6 hours a week instead of 3. A standard studio course would meet on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 11. And that's kind of important to the model that we're proposing. A standard load for a art and design faculty member is 6 courses per year, so 3 courses per semester. That's an 18 hours of contact hours with students per week under that model. Last thing, the kinds of content in these classes specifically, it's similar to other classes. There's a lot of analogies that can be drawn to the other studio classes, but I'm going to be talking about the kinds of content in our graphic design classes. It is primarily project-based learning. The students are working on projects. That is the main thread that runs through them. You can see these black lines, that's the majority of what we're doing during the studio time. I'll mention why that's important. Students are producing work. Here's some projects like in Type 1, Typography 1, they may be producing projects like this, which are magazine layouts. And so they're learning specific things from that. Towards the end of Typography 2, they may do some information graphics like this that are leading into the later information graphics class here, but they may be introduced to it in later Type 1 classes. These projects, these projects are important because they culminate in their portfolio. This is a printed portfolio of one of our seniors. And they produced these books. There's an online version of this. The online version of their portfolio actually starts way back here at the end of Type 1, and they're refining their portfolio all the way through the program here. This portfolio is super important. They're online and the printed version. What this is what their potential employer sees when they go for job interviews. Their potential employer looks at their portfolio and can assess what kind of skill they have. The potential employer cares very little about their grades, cares a little bit about their resume, but what they really care about is what's in this portfolio. And that's why it's so important how much time we kind of spend on it through these studio classes. And it gets the bulk of our attention. And that's really what art and design teachers excel at, is the projects. So, but there's other parts that happen in the class that are important as well to support that. One is technology. They have to learn a decent amount of technology to produce these projects. In graphic design, we're talking about Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, the Adobe products. They need to be very proficient in those. So in the classes, in all of these classes, there's different times where they're learning different kinds of technology. They're also learning professional terminology, some history, and just some design concepts and research methods and things like that. These two things are happening sporadically throughout. The idea of this model and this grant is to look across the curriculum, find where these things are being taught, and pull them out and try to teach them in a different way, because we think there's more efficient ways to be doing that. So that's what this proposal is talking about. So we're going to switch gears and switch from talking about the context to talking about the model itself. So what I want to do is pick one class, Type 1, and talk about a student's experience, what they would experience in that class under this model. So, standard experience. Type 1, taught at 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 hours. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours. MWF for those. So that's their standard experience where they're kind of doing all this peppered in throughout. What we are proposing within this model is that Friday changes. It changes from a studio session. So let's call these studio sessions. That Friday would become a lab session. And it would be hosted and run by a facilitator. We'll talk more about the facilitator as we go, but it's in the lab session that these things, we'll put some color codes in there. So this is going to focus on purple and kind of technology. So the student comes in on a Monday, it's a typical week, and he's going to know, outside of these studio sessions, he's got some online modules that he needs to take care of. And so on this particular week, he sees that he's got a technology module and a terminology module. So the technology module is, he gets on there, he sees the professor saying, okay, this week you need to learn this specific technique within the software. You need to be proficient in doing this particular thing. here's the kind of thing you will need to produce at the end of the week. Here's some Linda videos that are going to teach you how to produce this thing. You can practice by producing this throughout the week after you look at the Linda videos and kind of learn the software and how to do that. But at the end of the week, at the lab session, a facilitator is going to show you something very similar to what I'm showing you, and you're going to have 20 minutes to recreate it. And the only way you can recreate it if you're proficient in the particular technology concepts that you're learning. And so at the end of the week, he goes to the lab session. There's a time where they're presented with the technology exam. They've got 20 minutes to show proficiency. After they're done, the facilitator comes around, checks that they're proficient in that, either they're proficient or they're not. So technology modules in general would be competency-based. But he also has a terminology module, let's say. So he's also needing to learn that week specific vocabulary. And so there's all of this vocabulary related to typography, so that particular week he's having to memorize 15 different pieces of vocabulary associated with typefaces. And so he knows, all right, at the end of the week at the lab session, he's going to take a quiz that is going to test their knowledge over the terminology. Okay, so that's an example of a student taking 2 different modules. Let's talk about the way we're conceiving of these modules at this point. We're thinking at this point that there would be 3 different kinds of modules. One is the technology module that we just described. 2 would be the terminology. And 3 would kind of fall into the history and conceptual modules and concepts. Okay, so let's talk about assessment of the 3 different modules. So assessment for the technology modules would be these technology exams that they take with their basic description. Terminology assessment is pretty standard. We're already doing a lot of this with different online quizzes. They would need to be proctored because the nature of the vocabulary would be very easy to look up on your phone and things like that. So having the lab session where they're proctored. This last module more than likely would be assessed through blog posts and comments. Where they are assigned at the beginning of the week in the module certain readings or certain things to watch, and then they have to respond and summarize certain information. Often in our blog posts, they're required to have imagery, images that exemplify the concepts. They may need to provide links to outside sources that relate to it. And then again comment on other sources. So that brings me to the facilitator. The role of the facilitator. So again, the facilitator would primarily be responsible for this last session. That's not actually a facilitator. So the facilitator. He would be responsible for most of the assessment of the modules. The blog post would be one of the exceptions. The blog post, the facilitator could get in, check formal requirements of the blog posts and comments. Has the student met the word count requirement? Did they include an image if it's required? Did they include a link to an outside source? Are their comments substantive, or are they just, oh, that's a good idea? And so they can double check and put a grade on the formal qualities. Later, on the formal requirements of the blog post. Later on, the faculty member would go in, and all his responsibility would be is to grade the actual conceptual information within the blog post. Did the student address the concept appropriately? And so he would be the one that would put the grade on that. The one other thing the facilitator would be responsible for and could help out with in the lab session is a check-in point for the project-based learning. So within these projects that they're doing, there's lots of process materials and process along the way. Sketches, students are always required to do sketches along the way. They're required to do rough comps. Each individual project may have different kinds of process materials that they're required to do along the way. Now that's getting checked along the way, but it hits the back burner a lot because of the pace that things move. The lab session would be a great point at which the students would be able to kind of be required to check in, show their process material, and the facilitator can just be checking, yes, they did their sketches, yes, they have their rough comps. He's not having to look at quality, he's just looking that they completed it, and they're getting points for completion and being up to date with the project as it goes. Okay, so what does this mean for the professor? So in us discussing this model, to imagine all of this kind of offloaded to the facilitator, to the lab session, when we kind of really thought through this, we realized, okay, we could really teach a fourth class in a semester. If we use this model for 3 classes, we would have time to go ahead and add a fourth. So we would gain a 33% efficiency, meaning for every 3 classes, we could teach a fourth. What that means specifically for our program is we can teach 3 more classes. Phase 1 would be implementing the model. And so I'll talk a little bit more about phase 1 and phase 2 in a second. But essentially realizing we can put 3 more courses into our curriculum or into the program. Of course, we'd have to change degree plans and things like that. So there's some things we have kind of thought through in that way. And there's lots of different things we can do with that extra capacity, because that's a significant amount of extra capacity. But before I do that, I want to talk about budget. What does this cost? What does it cost to do something like this? So, budget. This is really important. What we are imagining for budget, to create the modules for these 7 classes, we have figured it at $2,000 per course. So there's 7 classes here, so that's $14,000 for transitioning these classes, creating those modules, and the training for the facilitator as part of the modules. So $14,000. We can't do course load reductions. There's nobody to teach these classes. We can't find MFAs in town to teach these courses. Course load reductions really don't work for us very well. And so we're talking about a stipend per course at $2,000. The 3 of us, so in summers and over breaks, we're all working on freelance work. So what the $2,000 per course does is buy us away from freelance work. We really tried to be as cheap as we could with that. So $2,000 per course for us is kind of at our rock bottom. Hopefully that's okay, and if it's not okay, if there's not enough budget, that's fine. But that's kind of where we are budget-wise for transitioning these courses. The facilitator, right now our estimate is the facilitator we would pay the facilitator $1,000 per course. So we're thinking that this is essentially kind of 1 hour of the course is kind of offloaded to the facilitator. The content is all created by the professor, but about $1,000 per course would cover the facilitator. So for an annual, for the annual cost for these courses, that's another $7,000. There's one other thing we'd like to add to that, and that is a student technology assistant, essentially. That there would be a student who's like a senior level graphic design major who's very proficient in the technology, who works in the lab like 5 hours a week as a tutor for people working towards their technology modules. All of these courses may have technology modules running at different times, and so a student really proficient that works 5 hours a week in the lab that students can go to and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this particular technology thing, and can kind of assist in that, preparing students for the technology exams. We think that would work. That's roughly like, I think $800 a semester And so if we added another $1,600 onto that, not 16,000, 1,600, for the whole year, so 21, 22, 20, 23, 6, is roughly what we're talking about for the first year. 21, 22, 22, 6, not 20, 36, sorry. So our budget is at about $22,600 for the first year. Phase 1 and phase 2, so let's talk about that. Phase 1 would just be kind of implementing all this and seeing if we can really get the model to work well. The second phase, that's essentially this summer and next year. The second phase, again, would be about figuring out what do we want to do with this capacity. Some ideas. Okay, we could teach a typography 3 class that students could take. They have they have studio electives that they're required to take under their degree plan right now. And so these classes would be optional as studio electives, or we could say, all right, we're going to reduce the number of studio electives and require these extra courses. But we could teach a typography 3 class at this point. We could teach a junior level portfolio class. So we have a senior level portfolio class. Having a junior level portfolio class would really bring some interesting benefits. We could look at adding a 5-year master's with the extra capacity. That could be an interesting thing that we could possibly do. We think there could be some demand for a 5-year master's. We'd have to see, because it wouldn't cost a lot more, potentially under this model, we'd have to see, all right, obviously what's the break-even point for a 5-year master's? Phase 2 is really exploring that. The other part of phase 2 would be looking at the other programs in our department are best to potentially deploy the model to them. We've already talked to the interior design professors and the program directors, and they're really excited and interested in this. They see for them it can solve different kinds of problems. For them, they're teaching overloads right now. The state of the interior design program is requiring professors to teach overloads because of some issues. This could solve that. And so rolling out, phase 2 would also involve rolling this out into another program. And so there it would be a cost savings. We could see some immediate cost savings in the interior design program. Obviously for us, it's not so much about cost savings, but increasing capacity. So you might say, all right, that's great. We've saved some money in the interior design. We have increased capacity in graphic design. It's not a huge money saver. The big thing for us is over the longer period, within the next 5 years, we will probably have one of our professors retire. What that means for us likely is Greg Strawn is going to tell us that they can't afford to replace that position. That's what we're kind of anticipating. This model could let us elegantly phase into that. And it means that we don't have to worry about, oh, do we need to cut a program? Do we need to, how are we really going to reach some savings when we miss, when a professor leaves and we can't replace them, all of a sudden we have to cover these 6 classes. Under our typical model, I don't think there's a way for us to do that elegantly. Under this model, it could really save us, and we could actually be doing, what we're doing here, I think, is actually improving some things for our students. And so I think we could actually, in 5 years, be doing a better job with less faculty. Like I said, a 33% efficiency, obviously on the reverse side, means for every 4 faculty members, we can do it with 3 faculty members. So that's pretty significant. What that means financially, if a professor retires with salary and benefits at the stage they're at, that's probably $100,000 of annual cost at that level that we will save, right? So $100,000 a year savings when someone retires and we don't replace them. Of course, we're still having to pay the facilitators. The facilitators, to cover their load for the facilitator costs, that's about $18,000. So we save $100,000, but it costs us $18,000. That's roughly, obviously, a $60,000 annual savings when someone retires and we don't have to replace them. Or we can't replace them. So I think this model has some potential to really help us transition, make some transitions in the future that will be beneficial and efficient for us. Some side benefits. This kind of thing has a few big side benefits. Let's say for students that are studying abroad, having these modules already created for the courses means that when a student studies abroad and we hire someone in Oxford to teach a course for us, a big part of the course, a big part of the nuts and bolts of the course is already laid out. Finding someone in Oxford that can lead and deal with the projects is much easier than forcing them to teach technology and specific concepts that are unique to our particular program. And so study abroad has some interesting, great benefits to deal with. Adjuncts as well. If we need an adjunct to come in and teach a class, let's say one of our professors goes and teaches a study abroad. We're down a professor per specific semester, or with faculty renewal leaves. When someone's gone and we need to bring in an adjunct, we have this part taken care of. A big thread through the class is taken care of, and they have a lot of resources when they start. We know they're going to get a similar experience in a lot of ways to what they experience with a regular faculty member. So some of those side benefits. I hope that gives you a clear view of what we're trying to do here. I think it has some interesting possibilities. And it's daunting. If for some reason you don't think this will work, or you think there's not quite enough budget for it, the faculty involved in this, we've got a lot of other things going that we're really interested in, and so that's okay. But we do think this has a lot of potential and could really do some interesting things for us. So I hope you take this seriously. Thank you so much for spending the time watching this. I know it's a bit long, but it felt like the best way to kind of get these ideas across. So thank you, appreciate it.